All right, more than 200,000 Wisconsin voters were purged from the registration rolls in August. 174,000 for not voting and 31,000 for moving.
A year and a half ago, that list of movers brought a lot of controversy. I actually dug into that list of voters at risk of being purged. A lot's changed since then. Tonight, the I-Team's Sean Gallagher finds out what gives and what's different from the last time.
Every 2 years after a general election, state law requires voter registration records to be verified as up to date. People who haven't voted after 4 years, moved and didn't re-register, and those who have died are deactivated from the rolls. To help with the process, Wisconsin relies on a system known as ERIC, or the Electronic Registration Information Center, to help identify those people. But the I-Team found it's not always accurate.
How did you wind up on this list?
I have no idea.
18 months ago, the I-Team found 3 out of 43 people on Milwaukee's north side had been incorrectly flagged as a mover. They were included in a list of more than 232,000 voters statewide that Eric said had moved. All of them were sent a postcard asking for verification. Since then, the Wisconsin Elections Commission has had even more contact with the people on the list, sending out postcards every 3 months.
Hopefully, that will lead to them being able to re-register in a time period where it's a little more relevant to them.
Megan Wolf with the WEC says most told them the ERIC list was right. Nearly 60% had moved and updated their registration at their new address. But the increased contact also highlighted ERIC's flaws. More than 16,000 people said they had not moved and were incorrectly flagged. Ultimately, the increased contact helped decrease the number of voters on the ERIC list from 232,000 in 2019 to 32,000 as of this July.
We now get that data on a quarterly basis rather than every 18 months. And so what that means is that we're going to be contacting those voters that have potentially moved more close to that actual move or that actual transaction that they've done with the DMV.
But the question still remains, can the ERIC list be trusted? The I-Team looked into Milwaukee County's portion of movers who were deactivated to see if it was accurate. I went to voting wards in the Sherman Park neighborhood, home to 155 people deactivated from the movers list. I followed in Steve's footsteps, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and sending emails. My name's Sean. I work over at Channel 4. Jasmine Williams doesn't live here. So another accurate one. This address came up for one Raquel Jones. Does that sound familiar? She moved. Okay. The city with the second highest number of movers behind Milwaukee was here in West Allis. So we're going to knock on a few doors here as well. Somebody at this address on the list for Kimberly Jackson?
No.
All told, I contacted 150 people on the new ERIC list in Milwaukee and West Allis. Of the 30 who answered, only one told me off camera they still lived at the location the movers list flagged.
We also know that it's not perfect, that some of those records are inconsistent or there's some errors.
Professor Barry Burden studies elections for the University of Wisconsin. He sees the benefit in sending these notices to voters more regularly.
Those individuals have had a lot of time to act. They were first notified back in the late summer or fall of 2019. I think it should not be rushed.
We believe they couldn't wait 12 to 24 months. They had to do it within 30 days.
A 2019 lawsuit by the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, known as WILL, wanted to see the WEC deactivate those voters after 30 days rather than after 2 years. One of its attorneys, Lucas Weber, felt the information from ERIC in 2019 was reliable enough to do so. Did you feel after 30 days that it would have been accurate and it would have been accurate for them to deactivate those people who didn't respond?
And certainly the information that comes from ERIC is reliable information, which is what the statute requires.
But the Supreme Court ruled against WILL, and the state kept voters on the rolls for the 2020 elections. Had they ruled differently, many voters could have faced more hurdles at the polls during last year's election. But still, Wolf says they never would have been deactivated.
When those voters showed up at the polls, they were asked by the poll worker, have you moved? If the voter said yes, they'd be prompted to re-register at their new address. If they said no, then they would be able to sign the poll book affirming that they still lived there and be able to receive a ballot at that address.
While most of Wisconsin will not be voting this November, now is as good a time as any to check your voter registration status at myvote.wi.gov. Reporting for the I-Team, I'm Sean Gallagher.
Good follow-up, Sean. Just want to point out, I knocked on those doors in January. He went on a lovely autumn day. From 232,000 down to 31,000. why a controversial list of voters was deactivated with little fanfare from either political party. Find out how the State Elections Commission whittled down that list at tmj4.com/iteam. Friendly